right, so y'all go ahead and do the factoring and the math knowledge question for today. Pause the video, and then once everyone is finished, you can unpause the video and I'll go over the correct answers. So for this factoring, you're going to start off by taking this 4 and multiplying it by the 1 and removing it, and you'll have x squared plus 4x plus 4. And then you're going to factor it, and when you factor, you've got to replace the 4. And so you're going to have 4x plus 2 times 4x plus 2. Both of those will reduce to 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 1, which can be written as 2x plus 1 squared. So that would be your answer for the factoring. Now for the math knowledge question. They tell us that lines M and N are parallel. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to actually extend this line a little bit further. Okay, I'm going to make that a transversal that just keeps going. Now if this part here is 80 degrees, that means that this part here is 100. So if that's 100 degrees, this angle here is 35. This angle is the third angle in the triangle, and it is going to be 45 degrees. Now this 45 degree angle right here and this x are alternate interior angles, so that means that x is also 45 degrees. And so your answer should be B there. You probably can come up with another way to solve for x, but any way that you do it, you should still get that it equals 45 degrees. Okay, so today we're looking at lesson 68. We're dealing with Introduction to Trig Ratios. Trigonometric usually is just shortened down to trig. So hopefully you will understand your trig ratios after this lesson. We did deal with them last year, so some of you may remember them from last year. Some of you may have completely forgotten them, but hopefully some of y'all remember at least a little bit of them, and it's not completely new. So trigonometry. Trigonometry is the study of the relationship between sides and angles of a triangle. So your trig that you're going to be dealing with deals with relationships between the sides and the angles of your triangles. A trigonometric ratio is a ratio of two sides of a right triangle. So when we're dealing with our trig ratios, we are going to be dealing with right triangles. There are ways that you can use your trig functions for non-right triangles, but the trig ratios that we look at today are only for right triangles. Okay? The sine of an angle is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle is adjacent over hypotenuse. Cosine of angle A is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. And then the tangent of an angle is going to be the opposite over the adjacent. You will have to memorize those three if you didn't remember them from last year. Some of y'all may actually still have them memorized from last year. That's great if you do. If not, you will have to memorize them. These will definitely show up throughout the year. They will be on the EOC, and we'll use them very, 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 very frequently next year in pre-calc and in calculus. You definitely need to learn opposite over hypotenuse is sine, adjacent over hypotenuse is cosine, and opposite over adjacent is tangent. This is the mnemonic that this particular book gives. Studying our homework can always help to obtain achievement. The S is for sine, O for opposite, H for hypotenuse, C for cosine, A for adjacent, H for hypotenuse, T for tangent, O for opposite, A for adjacent. That's what this particular book gives. Another mnemonic that you may remember from last year that the book last year gave was Oscar. What was it? It was dealing with Oscar and Arthur. Oscar had a hold on Arthur. Oscar for O, had for that H, a hold on Arthur. Oscar had a hold on Arthur. So that's another mnemonic that the book gave last year. you may have heard SOHCAHTOA or SOHCAHTOA, that SOHCAHTOA, kind of like an Indian word is what it sounds like. You can make up your own mnemonic. It really doesn't matter to me, but you've got to learn it at some point, somehow. Whatever you use to memorize it works for you. Do that. Alright, so looking at this figure, we want to give the sine, the cosine, and the tangent of angle M. So, we write, when we're looking for the sine, we don't actually write out S-I-N-E. We abbreviate it to be S-I-N, the sine of angle M. Now, this is not said as the sin of angle M, the sine of angle M. Now, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So, what side is opposite of M? The 12. So, 12 over, now what is the length of the hypotenuse? Well, if you use your trig ratios, not your trig ratios, if you use Pythagorean theorem, you're going to find that this is equal to a 13. So your hypotenuse is 13. So 12 over 13. And that's all you would do for the sine. For the cosine, the abbreviation is COS. So the cosine of angle M, do not say the cos of angle M or the cos M. The cosine of angle M. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent side is 5 over 13. So 5 over 13. And then the tangent. Again, TAN is the abbreviation, but you still need to say tangent. Don't say tan. The tangent of angle M is opposite over adjacent. So the side opposite is 12 over 5. Okay? So that would be the sine, the cosine, and the tangent of angle M. Looking at the next one, we're going to use a calculator to evaluate each expression. And you want to round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So you can pause the video and you'll get your calculator out. Whenever you are using a graphing calculator, if you went and got one of the ones out of the thing over there in the classroom, you need to check the mode. You need to check that button. It is right next to the blue second button. Whenever you click on mode, you're going to see two options, degree and radian. It needs to be dark on degree. You do not want it to be on radian. I told y'all that last year, so some of y'all may remember that. But every time you go get a calculator over there, you need to check to make sure that it is in degree. If it is not in degree, you need to use the arrows and get it so that it is blinking on degree and then hit enter. So go down using the down arrow until you're on that line that says degree and radians, and then you'll need to go left or right with the left or right arrow. Once it's blinking on degree, hit enter, and it'll be solid blinking on degree. And then if you want to check, just clear out of that, hit second quit, and then go back to mode, and it should be dark on degree. Then once it's dark on degree, then you can use it to evaluate these. Okay, so you are going to type in cosine 15 and then close parentheses. So cosine, you'll have 15 and then you'll close the parentheses. It'll give you that open parentheses whenever you do the cosine. So all you need to do is type 1, 5 and then close the parentheses. And your calculator, if you round to the nearest hundredth, should give you 0.97. So y'all check with your neighbor. If they did not get that, then help them. And then we'll try the next one. The sine of 45 is going to be 0.71. And then the tangent of 85 is going to be 11.43. So again, if your neighbor did not get any of those, stop the video. Y'all help them figure it out, and then we'll move on to the next example after y'all get it. All right, so looking at the next example, use the tangent ratio to find C to the nearest hundredth. So we're going to use the tangent, and our angle that they give us is 58 degrees. So the tangent of 58, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So the side that is opposite this is 25 over the adjacent, which is C. So we have 25 over C. Now at this point, we're going to solve for C. So we multiply both sides by C. And on the right side, the C's cancel. And so we have C times the tangent of 58 equals 25. Now to solve for C, we divide by the tangent of 58. And so your C is going to be equal to 25 over tangent of 58. Now, I have not used my calculator until this step, okay? So you don't actually need to figure out up here what is the tangent of 58. Just leave it in your work as the tangent of 58. And now, in your calculator, you're going to type in 25 divide by tangent, and it'll have a parentheses, so you do 58 and then close the parentheses. And that should equal 15.62. So you should get 15.62. It said round to the nearest hundredth. So again, you may need to stop the video and help your neighbor, but that's how you would find C using your trig ratios. For this one, we want to use the cosine ratio to solve for G. So the cosine of 27 is adjacent, which is 10, over the hypotenuse. So on this one, we again want to multiply both sides by G. Those will cancel. And then we have G times cosine of 27 on the left. And that's going to equal 10. So we divide by the cosine of 27. And so we have that G equals 10 divided by cosine of 27. If you plug that into your calculator, it says round to the nearest tenth, so you should get 11.2. And so that would be your answer for that one. Okay? Looking at the next example, we have a tabletop that is square, and it is 36 inches on each side. It's made out of 4 different types of wood given by the pattern shown. What are the values of A and B? Well, I'm going to use this triangle over here. And if I use it, I'm going to have the 22. I do not have the hypotenuse of this triangle. So that means that I'm going to use the tangent, because tangent does not have the hypotenuse. So the tangent of 22 is going to be opposite over adjacent. So our opposite is A, and our adjacent is 36. Now on this one, all I need to do is multiply by 36 on both sides. And if you look, I now have my A by itself. So I would type in 36 tangent of 22. You do not have to put a multiplication sign in between the 36 and the tangent of 22. You can just type in 36 tangent of 22. And so if you plug that into your calculator, you should get 14.54 inches, because it says nearest hundredth of an inch. So that would be your A value. Now for B. B is the hypotenuse. Since we have the same angle, 22, it's also the hypotenuse of this triangle here. So I've got 36 and I've got B. That is my adjacent and my hypotenuse. The one that uses adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So the cosine of 22 equals 36 over B. So multiply both sides by B. And then I'm going to have to divide by the cosine of 22. So I'm going to have 36 over the cosine of 22. And so your B value is going to end up being 38.83. inches. And so that would be your B value. Okay, so that's how you would find your A and your B there. So let's look at these practice problems. We want to find the sine of angle T. So the sine of angle T, we're going to take angle T, we're going to do opposite over hypotenuse. So that's going to be 12 over 13. And that's all you would put. You don't need a calculator for that. You would just do the ratio. For the tangent of angle U, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite is 5, adjacent is 12. Your hypotenuse can never be your opposite or your adjacent. It's always the hypotenuse. So if it's talking about adjacent, it's not the hypotenuse. It's the other side that's next to that vertex. For part C, we have 39 degrees. We have the opposite and the hypotenuse. So the one that uses opposite and hypotenuse is the sine. So the sine of 39 is opposite over hypotenuse. So we multiply both sides by 41. And so I have 41 sine of 39. And if you plug that into your calculator, you should get 25.80. It says to the nearest hundredth, so you've got to make sure you round to that second decimal place. Okay. Looking at the next, evaluate each expression. If you use your calculator, you should get 0.5, 0, and 1. Looking at the next one, we want to find the height. So if you look at this triangle, we're doing opposite over hypotenuse. So that would be using the sine. So the sine of 38 degrees is going to be h over 16. So our height is 16 sine of 38. And so our height is going to be 9.85 feet. It did not tell you what to round to on this one, so if you had rounded to the 10th and put 9.9, then that would be okay. It did not tell us where to round, so on that one, I can't mark it correct or wrong, depending on where you round. So if you had rounded that to 10 feet, that would be okay because it did not tell you to round to 100th or 10th or whole number or anything like that, okay? So now, looking at this challenge question, see if you can figure out how tall the water tank is to the nearest foot. Now, I will give you a hint. The water tank is talking about this portion here only. Okay, so only this height. So y'all pause the video and see if you can figure out what that height would be. All right, so some of you may have been able to figure it out. The height is going to be 13 feet. And it was to the nearest foot, so if you round your answer and you got 13 feet, then you probably did it correctly. So the way that you're going to do that, you're going to take this triangle here, and you're going to use the tangent of 25. The height here, I'm going to label as x, and then over 36. And so if you multiply by 36, you're going to get 36 tangent of 25. And if you plug that into your calculator, you should get 16.79. Okay, now I'm going to change to green, and I'm going to do this bigger triangle. So if you use this big triangle, and I'm going to label its height y, and again we're going to do tangent, but the angle on it is 40, and so I have tangent of 40 equals y over 36. So if you multiply by 36, you're going to have y equals 36 tangent of 40. And so your y value you're going to get 30.21. And so if you subtract 30, or if you do 30.21 minus 16.79, you end up with 13.42, which rounds to 13 feet. And the reason you subtract, we know that this whole thing is y. We're only looking for this part here. So the whole thing minus the x part will give you the top part. So that's how you would figure out how tall the water tank is. So hopefully somebody got that. If not, it's okay. But you do need to make sure you memorize what sine, cosine, and tangent ratios are. Okay, so your homework is 1 through 30. You need to make sure to do that tonight so that you can go over any questions you have tomorrow.